Talked about Mark Byington basically sleeping in his office. They had a dominating win last night over Kentucky. I mean, you could look at this from so many different perspectives. We'll start with the team itself. How important was it for them to get back on track after that 3-game losing streak, now picking up their second win in a row?
You know, we talked about it, that they weren't going to go undefeated, and that when they got in the SEC, it was going to get harder. And you know, we said last week, you know, the defense isn't good enough, rebounding's not good enough,
Right.
and you know that's why, like, nobody likes losing, but sometimes it's the best thing that can happen to you because you don't see your warts as well until you do. And so, you know, they learned what they were doing wasn't good enough. All right. I mean, now look, they got Texas's best shot in Austin. They lost to Florida in a close game here, and then they who was the third loss to? Arkansas. They got Arkansas's best shot. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Arkansas played out of their minds that day. And so when you're 17-0, you have a bullseye, you know. And so the bullseye was there. Teams were ready, and they exposed their warts. And you know, they showed that they're a mature basketball team because they took those performances and they got better. Mm-hmm. And you know, because they went to Mississippi State and they clobbered the Bulldogs, and then they come home and they absolutely throttled Kentucky, a Kentucky team that had won 5 in a row, and they played great defense. I don't know what Kentucky's final shooting percentage was, but I just know from watching the game it was putrid, and they battled on the glass a lot harder. And by the way, they still don't have Frankie Collins and Duke Miles. Yeah. So they're still missing a couple of big contributors. So I think that, you know, there was value in losing, you know, but there's only value in losing if you in fact learn from it, and they did. And so I think it's going to make them a stronger team here as we approach March.
You talked about Duke Miles missing this game. I know Mark Byington said he had some cleanup done on his knee and that he shouldn't miss long. But are you confident that this Vanderbilt team can basically tread water until he gets back and be able to, you know, win some more of these games upcoming until he comes back into the starting lineup?
I think the last 2 games are a pretty good indication that the answer is yes. You know, the fortunate thing for them is at 17-0, they gave themselves some leeway. Right. You know, you can take a few hits and still be okay. And so, you know, if they can hold serve at home largely, and they only have 1 home loss, and go 500 on the road, you know, that would be great. I haven't looked to see who's next on the schedule. I think it's Ole Miss. And so it'd be interesting to see, you know, just how that game gets played. I know the Ole Miss and Vandy women are playing Friday in Birmingham, so it's going to be interesting to see how that's handled. But you know, Ole Miss is going to be an interesting one for them to see where that game's played and how it's played, and if they can give that same kind of effort that they've given the last 2 games, because that'd be one that you'd like to get. But I think Ole Miss is 5-3 in the league, so it's not a pushover.
Yeah, and I think they went on that 3-game winning streak before. I believe that they dropped the last 2. Mark Byington spoke after the game. Let's take a listen to head coach.
I'm smiling because I was talking to the coaches. We usually have a coach meeting, and then we talk to the players at halftime. And then I talked to the coaches. I was like, what's the right psychology thing to do? You know, you don't tell them, you know, this team's great at coming back and put that in their head. And so we didn't talk about what they could do. We talked about what we could do. And we wanted to win the first 4 minutes. The timeout didn't come to 14:55, and I think we won it with free throws, 2 points. We extended out a little bit, and I just think our guys just never let up. And you really got to be that way because they have potential to come back and a talented team. And so we played 40 minutes and all the way to the end.
So, Coach, they're talking about how Kentucky, obviously, you know, they had that come-from-behind win against LSU. They had the come-from-behind win against Tennessee. When Vanderbilt took that 20-point lead at halftime, were you a little bit concerned, like, hey, you know, Kentucky, you know, they're still in this game because they have done this before?
Well, I just think, you know, it's a conference game. Yeah. You always expect someone to come back. And they made a little push to start the second half, and then Vandy just pushed them right back down to 20, and it was over. Right. And that's usually, you know, the last 4, first 4, you know, just like in football, is vital, and they didn't allow them any room to think they were going to get back into the basketball game. And so they handled business. Again, this is signs of a mature basketball team. I think the other thing that was really good for Vanderbilt in this game is I think they got upwards of 20 points off their bench, which is not something that they have always done this year, but they did get a little bit more production off their bench. And Tyler Tanner had a huge first half, but he didn't have to score a lot the second half.
Yeah.
Other guys stepped up, especially the other Tyler. He had 19 as well, and so they got scoring from some other places. I mean, Jalen Washington stepped in. I mean, Chandler Bing may have had close to 10 points, and every time I say that name, I just can't believe I'm saying it.